Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. So good to be on with you. Praise be to God. We are looking at day one of the next 4 years of the Trump presidency. How are you feeling about that? I would love to know. We're going to be following and tracking what's going on today in the festivities. The official inauguration doesn't happen until 12. I think it's the Eastern Standard Time, but we're going to be following it and discussing it today because Donald Trump made some big statements yesterday during his Trump rally, and we'll be covering this with Mike Koeniger at 14 past the hour. Big plans for day one. He's going to sign some 200 executive orders today. We're going to be talking about that. Immigration's big on there. The economy's big on there. Foreign trade is big on there. Wars and rumors of wars. All of that is going to be on the agenda today, apparently. It's a big day. You've never seen a day like this day. I think it's the best day. It's going to be very interesting, to say the least. So we'll jump into the inauguration with Mike Koeniger at 14 past the hour. But the country seems to be burning nonetheless. And we're going to be talking also about the fires out in California, because that's also a big deal. They still are raging. 27 people dead. Thousands and thousands and thousands of homes are burnt to the ground. The question is, with the insurance policies being canceled, can they even rebuild? How many bankruptcies will be the result of these devastated fires? We're going to have a conversation today with a committed Catholic who has also been elected official at a community water board. He's a civil engineer, and he's going to be on the team. Luis Cetin is going to be on with us at 30 past the hour to give us his insights into the water crisis and the criminal negligence, it would seem, in California and what the next 4 years might bring. Is this been a wake-up call for Californians who go so blue, so Democrat? Are they ready to flip? I don't know. I have no idea. Let's find out from Luis Cetin coming up at 30 past the hour. So lots of stories in the news today that we're going to be covering for you, and we're going to be putting them in the show notes over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Be sure to hang out with us in the email. When you get there, sign up to the email list. You get privileges and benefits. Part of it is the ACT Telegram Insider Group, where we hang out, we share our faith, our life, our family, and everything else with you 24/7. And this week's Bible study session number 10 is back on the calendar for Wednesday night. Don't forget, you're not going to want to miss it. We jump into salvation history. It's going to be fantastic. You get access to that through the email list. Sign up today. Can I just thank everybody who donated to our cause last week with our 2-day special on-air appeal? You mean the world to us when you are on our team, so thank you for that. We're going to continue to thank people as they come up all week, and I'll be making a few phone calls myself just to thank people personally. But let's pray. We got a lot to get to today. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come. Before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And now your saint of the day.
Saint Sebastian, pray for us. Sebastian was born in Gaul in the 3rd century, but raised in Milan. Though a devout Christian, he voluntarily joined the imperial army in Rome, so that he might better support fellow Christians and especially the martyrs by prayer and encouragement at their last moments. Through a miracle he worked by the sign of the cross, he brought about many conversions, including that of a Roman prefect and his household. Despite this, Sebastian's own faith remained hidden, and his reputation for bravery and honor was such that the new emperors Diocletian and Maximian made him an officer of the Praetorian Guard. Soon several of his converts were discovered and martyred, however, and before long Sebastian himself was brought before the infamous Diocletian, who ordered the soldier executed by archers. Sebastian miraculously survived the onslaught of arrows, and nursed back to health by the widow St. Irene. But upon recovering, he confronted and reproached the emperor, and was swiftly beaten to death with cudgels. His body was thrown into the public sewer, but was later recovered for veneration. Sebastian is a patron of soldiers and athletes, as well as against plague. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saintsandseasons. Saint Sebastian, pray for us.
And now your headline news. Epoch Times reports 3 hostages released to Israel as ceasefire begins with Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed on Sunday that Hamas had released 3 female hostages amid a fragile ceasefire deal that went into effect early January the 19th. The Red Cross had earlier confirmed that the 3 hostages had been transferred to them and were on their way toward the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli Securities Authority in the Gaza Strip. Ground News reports TikTok restoring U.S. service after Trump provided assurance. TikTok is restoring service to users in the United States after a federal ban took effect due to national security concerns about its Chinese roots. President-elect Donald Trump announced plans to issue an executive order to extend the time that TikTok will have to sell it off because ByteDance, which is connected back to the communist government of China, still owns it. So there you go. Catholic Vote reports Biden allowed AIDS program to fund abortions in Africa. The Biden administration allowed funding from a federal program that combats AIDS to be used for abortions in the Southeast African nation of Mozambique, a recent investigation discovered. The abortion funding came from the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, or PEPFAR. And I would highly encourage you to check out the 2024 expose I did on that subject with Michael Hitchborn when I went to Virginia for a press conference. It's on my YouTube channel. Your mind will be blown. Just let's leave it there. And those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Mark chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. And the disciples of John and the Pharisees used to fast. And they come and to say to him, why do the disciples of John and the Pharisees fast, but they, your disciples, do not fast? And Jesus said to them, can the children of the marriage fast as long as the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. But the days will come, the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and they shall fast in those days. No man seweth a piece of raw cloth to an old garment. Otherwise the new piece taketh away from the old, and there is made a greater rent. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles. Otherwise the wine will burst, and both the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be lost. But new wine must be put into new bottles. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. St. Chrysostom, a 4th century archbishop, would say, the disciples of John, therefore, and the Pharisees, being jealous of Christ, ask him whether he alone of all men with his disciples could without abstinence and toil conquer in the fight of the passions. Can they conquer in the fight of the passions? I love that. The Ignatius Catholic Study Bible would say, the bridegroom, Jesus uses marital imagery to reveal his divinity. His words recall several Old Testament passages that depict Yahweh as a groom wedded to Israel, Isaiah 54, Jeremiah 3, Hosea 2. The New Testament transfers this covenant relationship to Christ as the divine spouse of the church. See, for instance, Matthew 25, Ephesians 5, etc. They cannot fast. Since fasting symbolizes mourning and separation, it was inappropriate while Jesus was present among the disciples, something we talk about often in our Wednesday night Bible studies. St. Augustine, a 4th century bishop, would say, Mark here calls them children of the nuptials, whom Matthew calls children of the bridegroom. For we understand the children of the nuptials to be not only those of the bridegroom, but also of the bride. Theophilacus would say, an 11th century archbishop, He also calls himself bridegroom, not only as betrothing to himself virgin minds, but because the time of his first coming is not a time of sorrow, nor of sadness to believers. Neither does it bring with it toil, but rest. For it is without any works of the law, giving rest by baptism, by which we easily obtain salvation without toil. But with the sons of the nuptials, or of the bridegroom, are the apostles, because they, by the grace of God, are made worthy of every heavenly blessing by the grace of God, and partakers of every joy. St. Bede, a 7th century priest and monk, would say, but in a mystical sense, it may be thus expressed that the disciples of John and the Pharisees fast because every man who boasts of the works of law without faith, who follows the traditions of men and receives the preaching of Christ with his bodily ear and not by the faith of the heart, keeps aloof from spiritual goods and wastes away with a fasting soul. But he who is incorporated into the members of Christ by a faithful love cannot fast, because he feasts upon his body and blood. I'm thinking of you Protestants right there, actually. And listening to the words of St. Bede from the 7th century. You have to recognize the time of your visitation, and you have to act appropriately. When Christ is with you, you must feast. And when Christ is away from you, you must fast. And at all times, you must regulate your disordered passions. And you must embrace that which was given by Christ to his apostles and handed down to our day. And if you reject it, woe unto you. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Did you know you can help evangelize simply by using your cell phone? The Station of the Cross is partnering with iCatholic Mobile, America's only Catholic mobile phone company. When you join iCatholic Mobile, a portion of every dollar will support our programming. Plus, you'll enjoy great service with iCatholic Unlimited 5G data, text, and talk. With iCatholic Mobile, you can stay connected with family and friends while also spreading the truth of Jesus Christ with clarity and charity. Join today at iCatholicMobile.com.
Jesus Christ, welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and it's good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Even though my health has been like a roller coaster ride over this past week, I am glad to be back in the hot seat. And coming up at 30 past the hour, we're going to continue to talk about what's going on in California. This time, we're going to have an insider over there, somebody who really knows what's going on. Luis Cetin is going to be joining us at 30 past the hour to talk about the water crisis. And again, as an outsider looking in, it just seems bizarre to me. You know the Santa Ana winds come every year. You know the potential threat of wildfires there and how they could spread fast. And now we have 27 dead, thousands and thousands of homes destroyed, businesses destroyed. How many bankruptcies will result from this? I want to ask those questions with somebody who is a civil engineer, somebody who served on the water board, somebody who is a Catholic and understands what's going on there. He joins us at 30 past the hour to have that conversation. Do join us if you can. But speaking of the country burning down, it seems like maybe this could be day one. We're gonna change things around. Have a listen.
So we will be sworn in tomorrow. I'll be representing you as your 47th President of the United States. And just in conclusion, together, we're going to cut your taxes, end inflation, slash your prices, getting them back down, raise your wages, and bring thousands of factories back to the USA, right where they belong. And that'll be done through tariffs and smart policy.
Is that all on day one? I wonder. That's going to be a busy day today. Joining us now to talk about it is our good friend of the show, the Brick Wall, Mike Koeniger. Good morning to you, Mike. Thanks for your time.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Glad to hear you're surviving, right? And God bless Luis for being up at 4 o'clock in the morning, by the way.
I know it.
There you go.
Exactly.
Anyway, I think All right, Joe, I've got to be the voice of reason for just a moment. Allow me to be the voice of reason for just a moment.
Hey, you served in the Coast Guard. I'm sure it's reasonable.
It is not going to turn into the land of milk and prime rib. And yes, I said that for our good friend Jake. It's not going to turn into the land of milk and prime rib here. He's not going to be able to affect change like this in the first year or two. In fact, I'm going to remind folks, because I'm old, that Ronald Reagan, when he went into office in 1981, his first entire term was economic hardship because of the repercussions of the 4 years prior, or actually we could say the 12 years prior. And it wasn't until Ronald Reagan's second term that he was able to really affect a change in the economy. And we had a booming economy from 85 to 89, basically. And it carried on throughout the first part of the Bush administration. So there is just, Donald Trump is long on promise. I don't think he can change things quite that quickly. Now, can he open back up the oil pipelines in the first 100 days? Absolutely. Can he do some things with trade in the first 100 days? Yes. But it has to be everything he can do with executive orders. And contrary to popular belief and Joe Biden, you just can't declare things through executive orders.
Hold on. Let me push back now. Barack Obama, the executive order king of kings. I mean, that guy, he did so much through executive order. Joe Biden followed suit. And now Donald Trump has promised, and he reiterated this yesterday in his victory rally in D.C., today he's going to sign 200 executive orders. That's a massive amount. We're talking immigration, economy. We're talking DEI. He wants to get rid of DEI at the federal government and out of education itself. There has been some, I was reading Politico. Politico's no friend of Donald Trump. But even they were saying that he's got a lot of big plans today. But out of these plans, they're not certain that he's going to be able to pull it all off. He thinks they believe, Politico does, and I'll put links to this in the show notes, that he talks more than he's able to pull off. They don't think he has the support within his administration on day one to be able to truly do this, immigration being a big one. Mass deportations. What do you see there?
Well, this is where I push back. I think he can do those things on day one. These are policies that affect the executive branch of government, and the enforcement of immigration laws is an executive branch function. In fact, going back to my high school government teacher days, the executive branch enforces the laws. So any executive order that he can sign about enforcement of the laws is fully within his jurisdiction and power. So I'm not going to argue that too much. Secondly, I think Donald Trump 47 is much smarter than Donald Trump 45. He did not have the foresight to pick well when he was 45. And as far as who's in his cabinet, who the people are going to execute his executive orders, I think he's done a much better job. Let's say 65% of the time. I still see 35% of these folks are swamp creatures, so to speak. But he's done a better job of picking who's going to be on his cabinet this time. And these are people that are going to execute his plan. Say what you want about Hedgeseth. You and I had some reservations about him, not the same reservations the national media did, but differently. But Hedgeseth is going to get rid of some of the things that were huge issues within the military, and I believe is going to have a forward focus. This is Donald Trump's vision. Same thing with his Secretary of Transportation. Good traditional Catholic, by the way, with nine children, says he knows a little bit about transportation. I think he has some real ideas there. And so I am excited to that degree, but I am not in this land of milk and prime rib that all of MAGA Nation appears to be in, because we're in some tough straits. And as much as the Biden administration wants to tell us this is a great economy, I'm sorry, folks, it's not a great economy. You personally have seen your disposable income go to zero, correct?
Time. Big time, yes.
And it went to groceries. It did. And as much as Trump wants to turn this around, and I believe he's sincere, I truly believe he's sincere, I don't see the prices going back down. They may stabilize. No, I don't. They're not going to go back down.
Going back to your point you said a minute ago about, if Donald Trump was just starting his first term and he had 8 years, 2 terms to go through, we would see big change. It took Barack Obama 2 terms to truly turn the Pentagon into the DEI dystopia of planet Earth. And it's going to take him more than 4 years to turn that around. Pete Hedgeseth can do all he can. You just don't swap out generals and all their staff overnight. That's not a thing. It's bad enough. I mean, one of the good pieces of news is it looks like Donald Trump is going to reverse all of these discharges of men and women who served our country but didn't want to get the jab. He's going to bring them back to rehabilitate their records so that they can retire, get their benefits, etc., which is good. Praise be to God. But again, these things aren't going to just turn the ship around overnight. It takes a long time to do that. 4 years may not be enough to honestly do that. Okay, let me throw this log on the fire. What about foreign wars? He said in his campaign, Mike, that he's going to end the war in Ukraine. He's going to end the war in the Middle East. The ceasefire went off last night. Hostages are beginning to be released. This is hopefully a good thing in Israel. What about Russia, Ukraine? I think it's going to take them a lot longer than just a day or two to end that. I don't think those two guys are going to want to come to an agreement anytime within the next couple of months.
All right. You push back on me, Joe. No, I get to push back on you. Remember, there was a peace agreement, and the prior administration, the Biden administration, whoever ran the Biden administration, put the kibosh on that peace agreement. And actually, I've been listening to Scott Horton recently. This peace agreement has been in place since the beginning of this war in Ukraine. And so you and I, Boris Johnson, basically was our agent and said, nope, overdone. So this perhaps is something that can happen in the first 100 days if Putin and Zelensky are still willing to come to the table and sign this agreement. So I think that is probably attainable. What is more concerning to me are all the wars you and I don't know about. We know there are American troops in Northern Africa. We know there are American troops scattered throughout the Middle East. We know there are American troops in all kinds of places that we don't even know how to say the names of these nations. And so if Donald Trump is sincere, will we be going back into a more defensive stance, or as prior President W. Bush said, a humble foreign policy? And that's truly, I think, what we as Catholics really need to pray for, is a humble foreign policy where we are the shining beacon on the hill and we stop being the world's policeman to this degree. It has to be moderated some. So, Joe, I'm very concerned. You know, we destabilized Syria. Today, Syrian Christians are being killed and oppressed severely in Syria. Yeah. And this is the fruit of Obama/Biden, what's going on in Syria. This is theirs. They own it. And so, Joe, I'm much more hopeful on this front. Now, you heard me start pessimistic. Hopefully I'm getting to end optimistic. Donald Trump does have a 4-year history of not starting new wars. And so let's hope and pray that continues. And if indeed it does, and this is the one accomplishment of his presidency, along with maybe a North Korea, South Korea peace deal, which was on the table, ready to be signed, and his own administration scuttled it. And we know this from Time Magazine's reporting, where insiders anonymously talked about how proud they were that they destroyed this peace deal in Korea. If he can pull these two things off, along with a less aggressive foreign policy, Joe, this will be a decent presidency. It's not going to be the land of milk and prime rib, but it will be a good presidency. And I am hopeful for that. And I'm very thrilled to hear that our brothers and sisters in arms who were unlawfully discharged from the military may get some recompense in that regard. And that's a huge positive. And, you know, I got to say, Hedges focused on nothing but DEI. The problems in the military are much, much deeper than DEI. Yeah. We're talking about a leadership chain that has essentially become incredibly political. And that's never been the part that the military should be taking. The colonels and the naval captains of the military are probably just as much a problem as the admirals and generals are. And I find that incredibly
That's my point.
concerning.
Well, I would push back even further than that. It goes back to the midshipmen and the cadets at the academies. I mean, they're being indoctrinated now at the earliest possible level. And, you know, you can go to college and get a 4-year degree at any university you want, but you're likely not to be a major general unless you've been to the academy. And so the academy is really the seminaries, the breeding ground of future leadership. And when you're training them there, as the U.S. Air Force Academy has now for many years, trained them to believe that Christianity is just one of many religions equal to that of Wicca, then you've got massive problems. If you can't see truth for a person, the one and only way to salvation, to God the Father, then you are incapable of seeing the world around you in its true reality. You're just not up for the task. So I argue that our leadership virus in the American military is so bad that it's our greatest weakness from our foreign allies, and they know this and they take advantage of it. Why do you think Vladimir Putin loves to campaign in our headlines in here in the West about how conservative he is, how Christian he is, how everything opposite of what we are? They know our weakness and they're exploiting it, which is why TikTok, owned by the CCP, still gets to manipulate minds of millions and millions of young Americans. And Donald Trump just handed it back to them on a silver platter last night.
All right, I'm going to jump up on this soapbox with you, Joe. So you're going to have to scooch over here.
You got seconds.
You got to scooch over. We have to pray that the senior NCOs and the senior-most chiefs of the naval services are able to mold these young men and women who come out of the academies and are able to push them to the right. It has always been the case that the enlisted ranks or the conservatives and the officer ranks are a bit more liberal, and maybe in this point, and I've been gone for a long time, Joe, maybe incredibly more liberal. So let's hope that influence of those senior NCOs can make a difference. Joe, we need to pray for President Trump. We need to pray for his conversion. We need to pray for him to have wisdom, and we need to pray that he has the people around him. And we need to pray for Joe Biden that he may be reconciled with Holy Mother Church and come back to his faith of his youth. God
Amen.
bless you, Joe.
Well said. Well said. The glass half full guy, apparently, Mike Koeniger, Mr. Optimist there. Thanks for your time today and your insight. We'll be tracking what's going on the inauguration today, especially as we get into our after show. But more on that still to come. Coming up after the break, let's talk about those raging California wildfires. Can we put the fires out raging in our country? More on that coming up after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and here are your headline news. Ground News reports LA fire lines, inmates shoulder the heavy packs and tackle dangerous work for less than $30 a day. Over 1,100 California inmates are working to help battle the Eaton and Palisades fires, which are the largest in the Los Angeles area. Inmates earn between $5.80 and $10.24 a day, plus an extra $1 an hour during active wildfires, according to the Corrections Department. Many believe inmates deserve better pay for their dangerous work as they earn less than $30 a day, risking their lives. Jeff McComber, the Corrections Secretary, stated that inmate firefighters' work is an essential part of the effort against the LA fires. Just the News reports, bill introducing Congress to reinstate 8,400 troops forced out over COVID vaccine. U.S. Rep. Pat Harrigan's Americans Act, filed Thursday morning, would reinstate 8,400 service members he says were wrongfully discharged. It clears their records, restores benefits, and ensures no future administration can weaponize mandates against our armed forces, a release says. Republicans, led by President-elect Donald Trump, have long said throughout the election campaign that action was coming. Ted Cruz, in his release, said the consequences of President Joe Biden's actions with vaccine mandates are still impacting readiness for armed forces. And The Pillar is reporting Bishop Joe Vasquez to be the next Archbishop of Galveston, Houston. This is my backyard. Sources close to the dicastery for bishops told The Pillar that Vasquez will be presented in the Archdiocese on Monday. In becoming the third Archbishop and the sixth leader of the Joint See of Galveston-Houston, he will assume leadership of an archdiocese of more than 1.8 million Catholics and the fourth largest city in the country. He's 67 years old, and he will succeed Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, who just submitted his letter of resignation due to his age of 75 in May. And I got to tell you, we've been expecting this. This is a rumor that's been around a long time, and now it's been validated. And those are your headline news. Hey, the fires in California are still a thing. They're still happening. People are still losing homes. It's still a big problem. Water still continues to be a concern. And by the grace of God, and a good friend of the show, Mateus, he connected me to a gentleman by the name of Luis Cetin. He is a husband, father of 6, 37-year-old employee of major California water wholesaler, where he promotes water policy among the various chambers of commerce, economic partnerships, and elected officials of the region. He served on a water board of a local community. He's been around. He knows the deal. He's been in politics for a number of years, and he joins us this morning. Luis, thank you for getting up early today from sunny California. We appreciate having you on the team.
My pleasure. Good to be here with you.
So I lived in California for a little bit. I have some familiarity with the place, but I got to tell you, from the outside looking in, it's bizarre to me. The Santa Ana winds come every year. Every year they come. They happen. It's like clockwork. You know that wildfires due to drought could be a problem. Why not take the necessary precautions to be ready for this? Why in the world would there be a water problem in California?
Well, like you said, we know that the Santa Ana winds come every year, but we also know that rain is cyclical in California, and it's off and on. You might get a big rain one year, and 2 years from now you get another one, but in between there's drought. And you would think that they would save all the water they can to equally distribute it throughout the state of California to prepare yourself in the event of these type of natural disasters. But it just doesn't happen. So that's the key question. Why aren't we ready for these type of disasters, not only from a water perspective, from a power perspective, right? Here in California, the governor a couple of years ago asked everybody to purchase an electric car. And the following day, he was asking people not to charge them because there isn't enough power on the grid. We're just not ready. We're not prepared. We don't think ahead. We don't think long term. We live for the moment in time. And that's what's happening in California. And what you saw here was a culmination of all those failed policies and feckless leaders who aren't willing to speak the truth. This is the culture of go along to get along.
So is it okay? So one of the stories that I've been talking about in regards to the fire, especially with water, was that they ran out of water. They just didn't have enough water pressure in the system. A, is that true? And B, what caused that?
Yeah, no amount of water would have helped them attract this fire completely. But if you would have had additional supplies, you could have prevented the spreading of the fire, and the additional supplies that could have come in to help the firefighters or the firemen was the water that should have been in the San Ynez Reservoir that was empty, and it had been empty for a full year. Why? Because it had a cover that had torn, and EPA requires some of these reservoirs to be covered to protect from a water quality perspective. And this cover had a cover that was torn, and for over a year, it wasn't addressed. That's an essential facility, and that should have been done in three weeks, a month max. And what I understand, the cost of doing that was about $180,000. So if you don't have the resources to address that, and you don't have the bureaucracy, you have a bureaucracy that creates obstacles to move swiftly to address these things, you're going to end up with these type of situation because everybody has an opinion, right? And everybody's opinion in Southern California has to be addressed. I respect your opinion. It doesn't mean that I have to accept it. So the common good is being ignored, and that's what happened.
I'm no math genius. I'm no math genius. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn once. $180,000 to repair a cap versus the now over $200 billion price tag of the damage. I don't know. It seems like that might have been a pretty cheap fix.
Yeah, it would have been a really cheap fix. But, I mean, and it would have helped tremendously, right? But these fires happen throughout history here in California, and it's not happening because of global warming. I refuse to accept the change in terminology. It started off as global warming, and it's still global warming in my book. And I just don't see the impacts here in California. I see what's lacking in California is a political will to do what's right. Move the water from Northern California down to Southern California, address the needs of the people from an infrastructure perspective, and be prepared. And it's just not happening here in our state.
So one of the other questions
is one-party rule, Joe. It's one-party rule. So when you have one-party rule, absolute power corrupts.
Yeah. Okay, so let me follow up on that one then. Is this not a wake-up call, Luis? Is this not a wake-up call for the people of California? They may not love Republicans. They may not love conservatives. They may not love Donald Trump. I mean, fair enough. They may not love those things. But do they love their communities burning to the ground more? It seems like virtue signaling. It's what it looks like. It looks like virtue signaling. We're good people, so we eat grass. We're good people, so we have an EV. We're good people, so what you name what your favorite liberal cause. It's just like that's virtue signaling. That's not based in fact and reality. The best thing for our community is to not let the place burn down, I would argue.
Yeah. Well, they may not love Donald Trump, but they're surely going to love him on Friday when he shows up. Right. I'll tell you this much. When Donald Trump was first in office, he came to California and he had Governor Newsom on one side and Jerry Brown on the other. And he told them, you need to maintain your forests. And prior to that, they were talking about they were doing everything well in the forests. That's not true. The forests in California are not maintained. The logging industry has been decimated in California because of the restrictions to clear forests. And so now they're signing on to the narrative. And so I guarantee you they're going to sign on to the narrative in terms of building a conveyance facility that we've been trying to build for 40 years and building reservoirs that have been on the books for 40 years, 50 years, in fact. And so they're going to sign on to the narrative. And if this is not a wake-up call, Joe, we're doomed. We're doomed. They need to wake up and accept the reality that these policies are just not coming to fruition in a positive way.
So the talk goes, the story goes that a lot of these water restrictions were to save endangered species. Have the people of California been given the opportunity to decide whether or not they would prefer to save endangered species at the risk of burning their communities down because there's not enough water resources to fight these fires when they happen, when the Santa Ana winds like clockwork show up every year? Did they ever make that choice? Like, yes, save the fish, burn my home. I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Well, Southern California is dependent upon imported water supply from the Colorado River or the Sacramento Delta. So the amount of water that you can import into Southern California does make a big difference in terms of the readiness and what the landscape looks like. If you come to Southern California today and you came 30 years ago, all the freeway embankments are dry. They're dead. 30 years ago, they were lush and green. But the issue with the endangered species in terms of bringing water down to Southern California from the Sacramento Delta is that it's being restricted through a series of what we call biological opinions. The environmentalists sue the state to restrict pumping because of the population of certain fish, and certain fish that are not even native to California. So I guess the big problem here, Joe, is that when you equate animals to the lives of humans, now you've got a bigger problem.
Yeah. There's no priority, it seems, or like practical, real, natural law-based priorities in this conversation. Yeah. I think that's part of the problem. So one of the other questions that's come to my mind is just the economy here of all of this. With 27 people dead and entire communities now truly devastated by this, the rebuilding of this seems wishful thinking. I know Donald Trump has said even yesterday in his DC rally, he said, we're going to get the greatest builders. You never seen builders like these builders. They're going to come in. Okay, great. That's nice and all. But who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay the cost? I mean, because if insurance companies have canceled their policies, which they said there's been reports that they were canceling prior to these fires, because the insurance companies know that Santa Ana winds come every year. They're not dumb. They're like the casino. They don't like making bad bets. And furthermore, as I personally know, because I'm dealing with it, insurance companies love to just say no to your claim, no matter if you have coverage or not, and make you fight it out tooth and nail all the way. How many families will never be able to rebuild no matter what? And good luck buying another house. You still owe the mortgage on that house that burnt down, by the way. And now you got to go find another house some other place. So bankruptcy for you, I suppose. How many families are going to be utterly devastated by this? What will happen to this land?
It won't be rebuilt. And here's the other reason why it won't happen. Remember, I told you that California is a one-party rule and absolute power corrupts. There are a series of state commissions that are positions that are appointed by the governor or the legislator. Well, if you control both houses of the legislature, you can control the entire makeup of each commission. One of these commissions is called the Coastal Commission, and they pass approvals and grant you permits to build along the coastline. It takes forever to get anything done with them. So that, coupled with a series of contaminant concerns and so forth with the land and planning and environmental issues on the hillsides, this is not going. It just won't happen. And from a financial perspective, there isn't enough money in California to rebuild the most expensive coastline, probably top 3 expensive coastlines in all of America. It's just not going to happen.
So
this is
does
devastating.
this land get turned over to developers? Does it get returned to the state? I mean, I think a lot of people are asking right now whether or not this is Nero 2.0. Are we burning the place down to make room for something else in the future? I mean, you do have a large migration problem over there in California. Maybe they can just build a giant migration center with, all of the accoutrement, like a spa or something, right on the coastline as they look out over the ocean, enjoy their fruity cocktails with umbrella drinks. Who knows? But it just seemed rather interesting that the people who have worked hard to pay the $1 million price tag for some of these houses, not that they were worth it, just that's the cost of living there. Now now where are they going to go? They're going to go to Kansas. They're going to go to Oklahoma because they can't afford any other place. That is an injustice. And I just wonder, and I'm looking at the clock because I'm at a break right now, I just wonder whether or not the people of California, whether they are Republicans, Democrats, liberals, or conservatives, or anything in between, maybe, just maybe, they might come to a point where they're like, you know what? I'm kind of sick of this. Maybe we do need a change. Maybe. I don't know. Hold that thought. Luis Cetin is our guest. We're having a conversation about the raging California wildfires from a practical perspective, from a real perspective. We're going to talk more about this on the other side of the break. And I may throw another couple of logs on the fire when it comes to water. Didn't Donald Trump promise to get rid of fluoride? I wonder what that might mean for us in the next administration as well. All of that and more is coming up. Plus, still to come is the after show where we talk casually with you about whatever is on your mind. Plus, we're keeping an eye on what's going on in the inauguration affairs today because he gets inaugurated at noon, but things are already underway on day one of the next 4 years. What do you think? I want to know more about that. We'll be talking about your comments as well. All coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Hey, did you know that President Joe Biden, outgoing today, saying his last goodbyes to the White House, on his way out, has now pardoned Dr. Fauci and General Milley. How do you like that, I wonder? I wonder what your thoughts are of that. Let me know in the comments if you're hanging out with us on one of the live video feeds. Did you want Fauci to be pardoned? Did he need pardoning? Why would Fauci need to be pardoned if he didn't do anything wrong? I'm asking. Just wondering. Want to get your thoughts on that? You can be a part of the conversation by finding one of the live video feeds over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. And you can find the watch live stream there. You can get on the email list there. You can join the podcast there. Check out our show notes where we're going to link to everything we talk about today at the top of the hour. Producer Jake will put those show notes up for you so you can check the sources for yourself at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. And again, if you contributed to our cause last week in our special on-air fundraiser, God love you. Thank you for doing it. And I'm especially grateful for those that contributed to purchase the brand new computer I'm going to need to run the show. Mary and Robert, I'm thinking of you, my friends from New Hampshire, my ACT insiders. You guys are amazing. God bless you and God love you. Hey, we're still talking about the fires in California, though. Raging still today. There's still an issue of fires there. They're still fighting them there. There's still problems going on, even though we've moved on in the news cycle, it seems. And we're having a conversation about it with Luis Cetin. He is a Catholic father, husband. He's also a member of the Republican Party there. He's also a former water board elected official, and he's been a professional, he's been in the water business there professionally now for 37 years. So he knows the deal, and he's an insider, and he joins us now again. Luis, good morning to you again. Thank you for your time. Really do appreciate you getting up early today because I know it's quite early there on the West Coast. So thank you again. So California just absolutely seems upside down. Now, I do want to follow up and ask you, how do you see the next 4 years? This is Trump's second term, but not having two back-to-back terms. Something I talked about with my last guest in the previous segment was it seems like he can try a lot, but can he really get done a lot with only 4 years on the clock? What do you say?
Well, I was hearing your conversation that you were having with Mike earlier, and let me share with you that last night we dedicated the rosary to President Trump's health and his success in his cabinet, right? And I think your Mike was spot on, right? He's not going to be able to do a lot from a financial perspective, a fiscal perspective to help families. But I'll tell you one thing he will be doing. It's just the hope, the optimism that he lends families like mine and others, and that our country's back on the right track. And our culture isn't going to continue to be declining. What I want, what my wife and I want for our kids, we want them to have purpose in life, right? A purpose-oriented life, happy, joyful, Christ-like. They serve God. And if you have a society that is making every effort to expunge Christ from it, the existence of God, that's worrisome for me, because what kind of joy will you experience when I'm gone, right? When I'm gone, what do I leave? What do I leave my kids the most? Faith.
Right.
That's what I was telling. So I'm really pleased, and I always often joke with my kids, Donald Trump is the most Catholic president we've ever had because of his stance on life. I know he's not perfect, but he has done more for the issue of life in America than any other so-called Catholic president that we've ever had.
Okay, so let's talk about that in connection to water, because there's two things that come to mind. I've had, one is fluoride. He's mentioned wanting to get that out of our water system. I want to know what your thoughts are on that, but I want to throw one more log on the fire to get you to comment on. I have a friend who is a like yourself. He is a multi-decade professional in the water industry. He's also a whistleblower. I can't name his name publicly, but he and I have had extensive conversations. Great man. And he has tried to raise and sound the alarm. And in fact, it got him canceled in the industry because of abortifacients in the water supply. And talk about the shift in the pro-abortion, pro-life war in our country. And we're marking the Roe v. Wade, anniversary this year with the pro-life march in D.C. And abortion clinics are less important today. They mail these drugs to women all across our country. They take them. They have their incredibly disgusting and horrible abortions right there in the privacy of their bathroom, and it all gets flushed down the toilet. And to include all of these harmful drugs that are in our water supply. How do we fix that if we're not willing to admit the problem and deal with it forthrightly?
Yeah, there's no doubt. We've always had campaigns where we tell people not to flush medicine down the toilet, right? And so, like what you're saying is, so why would you want them to flush these other medicines when they're doing their abortion, medical-induced abortions? It's also contaminating the water supply. And we should address that. We should talk about that, because that's also a restriction that should be imposed. But, what's interesting as you talk about these abortion clinics and that, they're getting their medicines to have these abortions at home. That's why the abortion industry was pivoting, right, to the gender treatment for kids at the Planned Parenthood. And so that's going to be something that's a benefit that Donald Trump's administration is going to put an end to, these efforts to transform these kids from one gender to another with hormones. But we're living in special times, because for 50 years we all sat there, hoping that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. And here we are in an era where we're on an upswing now, and more things can happen from a pro-life perspective, right? But I think it's going to take us, the little church, the domestic church, like St. John Paul the Great would say, we have to speak up in our homes. And here at my house, my kids are very active on the pro-life movement. They've gone to Planned Parenthood to pray. We've gone to One Life LA. And I'm very pleased to say that one of my daughters, who attends Franciscan University in Ohio, last year was at the pro-life march in Washington, D.C., something that I've always wanted to do as a young man. And for me, it was wonderful to know that my daughter was there. And so, we're doing our part. And but what's really important is that families, men of family, women of family, get involved in the political arena. For so long, we've stayed out of it, and we've got to go to war. A good state senator told me it's no different than those soldiers who go to war in Iraq or other parts of the world. Here in our homeland, we've got to get involved, even if it requires that we're not home during a birthday party, or we're not home for dinner every night. But at least we're doing the right thing out there while we're interacting with the general public, making a difference from a values perspective.
Do you think Donald Trump can have the fluoride removed across our country, or is this going to have to be a battle on a county by county basis, even throughout the states?
It's going to be a battle on a county by county basis. And I do believe fluoride is something that should not be incorporated into our drinking water supply. Here where I live, we don't have fluoride in our drinking water supply. That's one thing that I made sure when I was on the board that, because that's a parental decision, right? You've got to be consistent with your philosophy. It's a parental rights issue. I don't want to be feeding somebody's kid. I don't want anybody feeding my kids something that that I didn't decide to give it to them. And so we've made sure here where I live that we don't, well, I'm no longer on the board, but I will tell you this much. If I hear that the water district is considering it, I'll be the first one to public comment to raise my voice on that matter. But it is going to be a county-to-county battle.
So we're just about out of time on the radio side. On the fires themselves, what's the level of seriousness today that we're not hearing about in the news anymore?
It's subsided great deal. They're just mopping up. But most of the fires on the homes have been addressed. It is devastating. It is just devastating. There's a certain area where I used to live close by in Pasadena, Altadena. It is just the perfect storm, no pun intended. And these policies that we've ignored contributed to it, and you can't deny it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well,
it'll make a difference.
Luis Cetin, thank you for your time today. You're welcome to hang out with us, of course, in the after show, but I'm grateful that you got up early and gave us some insight on what's going on in California. College you as Californians, I'm not asking you to love everything conservative or Republican or any of that. I'm asking you to be sensible. Be sensible. Don't say fish and sacrifice your humans. Stop that. Stop that. At any rate, we'll talk hopefully more about it. Plus, we'll get your comments in the after show, whatever you think. I'd love to know what you're thinking about day one of the next 4 years. Is it all hot air? Is it the road to redemption? Is it the road to destruction? Whatever you're thinking, I want to know. We'll get your comments in the after show. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning. God love you.
The Station of the Cross began broadcasting in Buffalo, New York in 1999. Since then, our listening areas have multiplied and expanded into several states. While our mission is to grow the Catholic faith through radio and other media outlets, our apostolate is supportive of but independent from your local diocese. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments.
And we're back. Welcome to the After Show, everyone.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Praise be to God.
Morning.
I'm scrolling backwards in the Telegram group to see who's hanging out with us this morning. Make sure I give the proper shout-outs. Karen Collins is here. Good morning, Karen. Damon is here. Good morning to you. Jane, good morning to you. Got up with the dogs. Snow looks beautiful. We'll take a new pic. You know, it's supposed to snow in sunny Houston tonight or tomorrow. In fact, I jumped on Amazon to buy some of the. We were looking for like sleds, couldn't get them in time, and they were like price gouging us. So I got inflatables, so that hopefully, if it snows, my kids can have a little snow sled thing going on. We'll find a hill somewhere. It's flat. It's Houston, but we'll find a hill somewhere, or I'll put them on the roof and let them slide off the roof. That'd be fun. That'd be good. That's what Gen Xers would do. Hey, Paul. Good morning to you. Yvonne, good morning. Hope everyone has a great weekend time for us, or had a great weekend time for us to get up and get after it again. Let me know what you guys are thinking today about day one, Inauguration Day. What do you think? How do you think today's going to go? A lot of people were very concerned about security. Donald Trump moving to the inside in the rotunda, which is, it's been done before. Now, the official story is it was because of temperatures. It's cold in D.C., and if you're going to make all these people wait outside for hours after hour after hour in preparation because of security, that seems like unfair and not fun.
Well, I did see someone, Joe, saying that there's been no interior inauguration for 40 years, and that's since Reagan, and that was he was president number 40. So 40 and 40, I guess that means Trump's the Antichrist, according to this person. So that's literally That's basically the gist of what their argument was. And I guess that means like Lent is the Antichrist as well, because that's 40 days, or Noah was the Antichrist. I don't know. So I don't know.
Yeah. Moses, 40 days on the mountain, 40 years in the wilderness. I'm seeing the connection.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Either it means he's the Antichrist or it means he's the Messiah. I'm not sure which. They could go either way with one of those.
It's one or the other. It's got to be one or the other. There's not a middle path where, nothing ever really happens, guys. Like,
yeah. So, good call. Good call. Now, there was another rumor over the weekend that he was going to move it to the White House, which is not, as far as I can tell, there's no official anything about that. So that's just pure rumors. And there is going to be a big rally in an arena, and he's going to go to that later after the parade. But he said he's going to wear out his hand signing executive orders first. And he still has to be greeted by Joe Biden at the White House. So all of that's still to happen today. Festivities kicking off at noon Eastern. Janice asked, Joe, how are you doing? It was a bumpy ride over the weekend with my health. I did have some more issues over the weekend. It was like being on a roller coaster. I'd like to get off the ride, actually, and move on with my life, if I'm being honest. But my situation isn't so horrible. It's not like it's the worst thing ever. It's, it's manageable. It's just not fun. Kevin, good morning to you. Nick the Mike, praise be to God. Kevin, I'd love to know. You're an Air Force guy, Kevin. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Do you see Pete Hegseth turning things around for the American military? I got to say, the chair force. I mean, the Air Force. The Starbucks force, whatever they are. They led the way in wokeness, in my opinion. So it would be nice to turn that around. I'd love to know. Nick the Mike, good morning to you, my friend. Good morning. Honey West 25. Yeah, she also reports that Dr. Fauci got a pardon. The J6 committee and Milley. So he pardoned the J6 committee as well? I didn't see that. So Liz Cheney, did she get a pardon? Liz Cheney, she did, including the pardons coming in the final hours of Biden's president amount to an extraordinary flex of presidential power. This is from CNN. I'm reading this. They serve to protect several outspoken critics of President-elect Donald Trump, including former Rep. Liz Cheney. Boy, they got to protect their own, don't they? I should have known that was going to come. And it was too good to be true to expect justice, whom Trump has vowed retribution against. Well, I guess the good news is J6ers are going to start to come home. I wonder if that's going to happen today. Louis, do you think he'll react that quick with the J6ers?
I surely hope so. Listen, a lot of people did something they shouldn't have done, right? But the bulk of those people, they don't deserve to be exactly put in jail or followed by the government. I sure hope so. Those folks are just it's an injustice, really, for a good majority of the people with regard to J6.
Yes,
those are patriots. They love their country.
They were walking into the Capitol as tourists is what they were doing for the most of them. Yeah. Not all, but most. And it's a complete propaganda piece that they jumped all over and weaponized the DOJ. So hopefully all of that gets repaired. We'll see if it does. In fact, I don't know. I'm not convinced it will, but we'll see. Hey, Jane, good morning to you. Lori Powell, good morning. Patty, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Patty says, hey, Jake, the picture of the fireplace looks great as it's 20 in the hill country. Wind chill factor, 12 degrees in the hill country of Texas. So she is enjoying your warm fire behind you there, Jake. Brandon Joseph, good morning to you. So what's taking Trump so long? Let's see the miracles. Barabbas. Well, we'll see, won't we? Don Paddock, good morning to you. Good morning. June Ybarra, my friend from West Texas. Good morning to you. Nicole Andrea, fasting is prayer for our body. Yay and amen. Well said. Quickly undoing Biden's work. Well, we'll see how quick it happens. I mean, I think some of it's just going to be the true effectiveness won't be for some time. I don't see it truly being effective for some time, but we'll see. Dustin Turk says, good morning, Joe. Hope you're feeling better. I'm on the fence. Let's just say I'm on the fence. My health has been a roller coaster the last week or so. But I'm doing okay. I'm all right. I'll be fine. Praise be to God. Let's see.
Amen.
Let's see here. I'm looking at, there's a bunch of different places people are commenting. Janice, good morning. Craig, good morning. I see nobody cares about completing the Our Father prayer, the priest, so guess I shouldn't care. What? What are you talking about, completing the Our Father prayer? What is that, Craig? Why would we not care about that? Brandon Joseph Abear, putting your faith in Babylon. What could possibly go wrong? I would agree that there's something to that. I'm not putting all my faith in Donald Trump. I can tell you that much. He's got a long way to go. Is he better than the other side? You've heard me say this a billion times. Yes, of course he's better than the other side. My dog is better than the other side, so it's a low bar. Okay, but there's still a lot to be said about how do you turn the ship? How do you start to move in the right direction? This is definitely, I think, part of that. Now we have to keep pushing Donald Trump for change, right? We have to push him towards accepting truth itself. You know, he's got to accept marriage between a man and a woman and stop supporting gay marriage. He's got to stop it. One of his executive orders today, by the way, is to recognize only two genders in the federal government. That's a step in the right direction. Praise be to God. He's got to stop supporting in vitro fertilization. He's got to stop supporting abortion drugs. He's got to stop this stuff. These things are harmful to all humans, not just Catholic ones, but to every human. And it's natural law, and he needs to accept that. We need to encourage him to accept that. So we need to be about that. Let's also pray that he keeps the same foreign policy as his first term. Let's scale back from foreign wars and not continue to perpetuate them. Like I thought he did a decent job compared to his former Republican president administration partners there, like the Bushes, for instance. Even Ronald Reagan, I would say scale back. That would be nice to hear a scale back in the next 4 years. Tate Brown, good morning. Pardon means they must answer questions. They cannot plead the Fifth Amendment. Are you referring to, so in other words, I think what Tate is saying, if we get Fauci on in Congress in front of a hearing, they can no longer plead the Fifth. They have to answer those questions. Well, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? That'd be good. It'd be something. Improximus, welcome back. With his altered mental status, is Joe Biden able to pardon anybody? It doesn't matter, does it? I mean, who was it? It was Speaker. It was Speaker of the House, right? Speaker of the House. Didn't he come out over the weekend and say Joe Biden's not been in charge the last several years? It's been other people writing this stuff, and he just signs it. That came out over the weekend. It's like, well, why are you just now saying this? Because the guy's on his last day. Now you're saying this? You have an obligation to tell us what the truth is, even if it's inconvenient or not fun. Like these politicians, come on now. Tell us the truth. Stop playing the status quo. We need truth. Richard says, Joe, there is also tradition that the outgoing president leaves a letter on the desk of the incoming president. I wonder if that's going to happen. Well, interestingly enough, I did see an article over at Post Millennial that said Trump is to suspend security clearances for 51 former intelligence officers who claimed Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinfo. I wonder if the letter that Biden leaves has anything to do with his son, even though he's already pardoned him. I don't know. I'd be just speculating.
Joe, is that tradition, or is that something that we saw in the movie National Treasure?
Oh, I believe it is tradition, actually. I believe it to be a true tradition, but wouldn't it be fun that if Joe Biden had if he had a mental acuity for a moment and wrote something very interesting in an outgoing letter to Trump, that'd be kind of hilarious. Actually, it'd be kind of fun to learn of what Joe Biden might say. I'm just reading some of these comments. Lights 10.
Joe, that's another good point.
Go ahead.
Another good point we need to ask ourselves is, what's going to happen when America's relations with Canada and Mexico, right? Canada is going through some big change, and so is Mexico from an economic perspective. But they're really warming up to the Chinese, and so
big time.
I think Donald Trump's style of politics is going to be a big plus for North America.
So I'm a Debbie Downer by trade. I'm a pessimist. I'm not the half glass full guy. So I look at this and I go, okay, assuming Donald Trump's best intentions, he means the best. He wants to do big and great things. I just don't think he's capable of it personally, even if he means to, right? And the reason why I say that is because this knot is so tangled. I live in Houston, Texas. Yeah. It's one of the major trafficking cities in the country for human trafficking, for drug trafficking, for the cartels. They're in my backyard. They're probably in my neighborhood, for crying out. I probably have people in this neighborhood who work with them. No doubt. How do you untangle that? How do you truly if you don't, in my opinion, the only way I see that our country truly turns around and is quote unquote great again is by accepting Christ as king. That's literally the only way I can see any, like if that's not your first measure, if that's not the way in which you see the world through this lens that Christ is king, Viva Cristo Rey, then no matter what you do, I see it as flawed and limited, even if it's well intended. You know, and I've said this for a long time now. As a Catholic, we can't see the immigration crisis in the same way as, say, just the Republican Party sees it, or conservatives in general. Why? Because we do have an obligation to care for our neighbor. We do have an obligation to care for those that need help or desire it or come asking for it. You know, we're Catholics. However, that doesn't mean we don't have security first, law first, order first. We should have law and order first. So we must regulate what happens on that border. And I've said for a long time, lock it down. Nobody in or out until this problem gets fixed. You know, you're not leaving, you're not coming. I mean, the whole thing gets locked down. And I've always felt like we have to have a system in which we keep the bad guys out, and we have to have a system in which good guys can come, because we are a nation of immigrants. We always have been. We always will be. All of the native population in the North American continent came here via immigrants, came across the land bridge on a boat, something. There are no exceptions to this rule. Nobody was harvested from the ground here, ever. We all come from Adam and Eve. We all come from Noah and his 3 sons, and we all immigrated from someplace. So I'm okay with that, but it must be law and order, and we must have a way of identifying friend from foe. But Louis, I'm going to say, I don't believe that any system they come up with will be a good system. It'll all have its inherent downsides. And here's my prediction. And as soon as whatever they roll out today, mass deportations, family-run centers on the border, keeping people in Mexico, whatever it is, I guarantee a big chunk of the people who just voted for Donald Trump because they love the pep rally hoorah are going to turn against him as soon as they see how messy the whole thing really looks. They won't have the stomach for the reality of what it means to turn the immigration crisis around. What do you say?
Well, you're a realist, Joe. You're a realist, and I agree with you. And there is no nation without sovereignty of its borders, right? No, there's no country in this world that wants its borders to be violated. And so why does America have to allow its borders to be violated? In fact, from a worldly perspective, we're just enabling people to vacate their country, and they have an obligation to fight for their own democracy in their own countries, right? So if everybody leaves a certain country, who's going to be left in that country to fight the evil? But from a Canadian perspective, from the Canada perspective, Donald Trump's going to want to promote more natural gas and a drill, and the timber industry is going to be a good one for Canada as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of jobs being created in the northern part of our country as we work cooperatively with the Canadians, because Canada's turned to a more conservative government that also is recognizing the existence of God, Cristo Rey, like you said. You're right. A country that does not recognize the existence of the Almighty is destined to peril. By all means, it's in our legal tender, isn't it? In God we trust.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'll see. I guess we've passed it. Now it's time to see what happens from it. And I want the best. Don't get me wrong. I don't want it to fail. I want it to succeed, but we'll see what happens. Hey, Honey West, good morning to you again.
Yeah.
Gus DMH, good morning. Lynn Pine, happy Inauguration Day, Lynn Pine. Thanks for being on the team today. Does anybody have any concerns about security threats today? There was one report on X last night of a Ryder moving truck trying to get past security barriers near the U.S. Capitol. Could have been nothing, really. Could have been just some dude lost in traffic and not sure where to go. It could have been absolutely harmless, but we did find that very interesting. So we're sort of keeping a track of that. Rosie 6046, good morning to you over on the Rumbles. Good to see you here. Alberto, our friend from the UK. Hey, what are the Brits thinking about today as far as your American cousins go? How do you guys see today as far as that goes? I'd love to know what you think. I saw a fun comedian. There's this comedian, a British comedian. He's got, vibrant, bright red hair, and he was making fun of Americans. And I thought it was hilarious because he says, Americans always ask me, what do I think about 1776? And he's like, I have to Google it. He goes, listen, we have a lot of colonies that don't like us anymore. You're just one of them.
One of many.
You're just one of many.
If anything, we ripped the Band-Aid off nice and early so that they didn't have to deal with us doing it in the 20th century.
That's right. Oh, man. That's pretty funny. I tell you what. Where's my Don Franco? Good morning to you. Donald Paddock, by the way, says the letter that Biden leaves for Trump will be the first letter written with crowns. Probably have a Jell-O stain on it because it'll probably be Jell-O time when he's writing that. But anyway, apologies for being. Was that out loud? That was so unsensitive of me. Apologies for being so blunt, guys.
You're so ageist, Joe.
But your country is a total clown show. America remains in my prayers. Well, thanks, Don. I do appreciate that.
I can't disagree, Don Frank.
I can't. Yeah, I'm struggling to disagree.
I have
Don.
plenty of national pride, but I struggle to disagree with that.
There you go, folks.
What is this? Catholics with humor? This is great. Catholics with humor. I love it.
What was I going to say? What's awesome is, all of this is happening. There's also this whole UFO reveal party going down where all of a sudden you're seeing clips of like the recovery of a UFO egg made with extraterrestrial intelligence or whatever. I mean, it's the most vague and ambiguous, nonsensical footage ever. And as I've said repeatedly, and I'll repeat for the sake of our guest today, for me and for my house, I will never accept a UFO narrative. This aliens are demons, and don't be misled by this narrative. And I bring it up because as I was talking about this on X last night, Robert from the Determined to Be Catholic YouTube channel, Robert Nugent, he responded by saying, "You Americans are always so fascinated with UFOs. UFOs never visit Ireland. I wonder why." So true.
Well, if you listen to St. Patrick, that's just God protecting Ireland because St. Patrick seemed to think that the Irish would believe literally anything they're told.
Oh yeah.
No offense to my Irish.
The Irish.
But St. Patrick himself said he prayed that God would sink Ireland into the sea before the Antichrist comes because St. Patrick said that my poor Irish will believe every word he says. That was the prayer. So the prophecies are that Ireland will sink into the sea 7 years before
water
the
levels are
Antichrist
rising.
appears.
I've been told.
Yep.
Barack Obama said the water levels are rising. I wonder if they're rising at his house there on the island off of Cape Cod.
They seem to rise only in certain areas where there's need for expenditures.
Yeah, only in certain locations. But nonetheless, let's pray for Ireland, I suppose. Hey, Kevin responded. He says, restoration of service members' records is promising. We all swore an oath to the Constitution and to see the good men and women treated that way as an absolute travesty. A yay and amen. We lost a lot of capable war fighters in that debacle. So we'll see what happens there.
Hey, Joe, can I provide a comment on that from a parent perspective? I have a son who is a cadet, a senior master sergeant in Civil Air Patrol, with the dream of becoming a fighter pilot. In fact, last summer he went to the Air Force Academy preparatory program. And I have often, had conversations with him about what's going on in the military. And I told him, son, you'd be ready. Because, I do worry about what's going on in the military and the wokeness. And And so that's another reason why I'm happy to see what's happening today, Inauguration Day, because I am not going to stifle that desire of that young man to serve his country, because we need it. If you know, all these men who are serving in our military, and women too, but a good majority of these men have been brought up in good Christian homes, and who have been taught the virtue of, caring for others, and that includes their country. And so where would we be without those boys who stormed the beach in Normandy, right, who came out of all these good religious homes? If they're not Christian, they would have been Jewish homes, or primarily Christian and Jewish. But we need that. We need God back in our military, because all these young men and women who have been brought up in a fashion to care for others in love of country need to be able to find a place where they can continue to fulfill that formation and continue enriching it. So God, thank God that we're going to be having a change in terms of philosophy in the military. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's interesting because I've had this conversation a number of times. Having served in the military, my dad retired from the military. My sister served. My uncle, my cousins, my grandpas. Big, huge military family. Grew up a military brat. I can't, in good conscience, recommend the military to my sons because of the woke DEI. I mean, you have the woke culture coupled with a very secular, hedonistic culture, especially amongst the enlisted ranks, and then you couple that with throwing the lives of men and women away at the whims of the forever war deep state intelligence apparatus. We, during World War II, what is it? What was the precursor to the CIA? The OIC. I forget the name of it, the acronym. They parachuted into Vietnam so they could hook up with Ho Chi Minh so they can train him and equip him and give him guns. And then we turned around and we lost 60,000 American service members in the cause of fighting Ho Chi Minh. We did the same thing with Saddam Hussein. We did the same thing with Mubarak. We did the same thing with Gaddafi. We did the same thing with Osama bin Laden. We have a history of throwing lives away carelessly for geopolitics of those that don't see Christ as king. And so I'm like, I can't in good conscience give my blessing to my son if he's going to have to be vaxxed to no end, if he's going to be attacked and his life thrown away so carelessly, especially by woke DEI culture. Like, there's no noble cause right now. We're not fighting any noble causes right now. And so I'm attracted to the America First ideal, not because I think other countries aren't good or whatever, but because I think that the deep state forever war has to come to an end. The industrial military complex must be brought to submission to right order society. And it's not. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my sons, let alone my daughters, which my Congress now wants to take, to include many Republicans who want to support, bringing women into selective service. I don't want to give you my daughters. I don't even want to give you my sons. Sorry, but no, not for your forever wars, not for your industrial war complex, not for your back pockets and your paychecks. No, thank you. I told my sons, hey, if you feel called to serve, when you're an adult, you can do as you see fit, but I can't in good conscience sign over. I was 17 when I enlisted. My mother signed me over and they came and took me away. And as my wife says, I've never been the same since. So there you go. But it would be nice to see a change. But honestly, I just don't. As I said, I'm a Debbie Downer. I don't. The effort to truly change a culture is monumental. And if our and keep an eye on the academies. If the academies continue to play this politics that they're playing, you're not 20 years from now, they're going to be generals. You're not going to see any change if they aren't truly changed. So we'll see.
I hear you wholeheartedly, and I'm torn between the two, but I still think that we have to be everywhere as good Christians, good Catholics. We have to be everywhere to spread the word and to serve. But I do recognize the fact that the industrial military complex is part of the money making machine, and it continues even today in terms of how they select certain countries at certain levels of friendliness to sell weapons to them, right? And then in 10 years from now, they become an enemy. And so we have to build up greater weapons to fight them now. So it is a game. It's all this culture of go along to get along. But I'm between a rock and a hard place on that one. But I hear what you're saying. You know,
we've had good Saints serve. You know, I was thinking about the Praetorian Guard a minute ago. Over the weekend, I watched the new documentary film that got released a few weeks ago called Gladiator 2, and which features the Praetorian Guard, which decided who got to be emperor and who didn't for a very long time, as it led up to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And there are saints who have served even in the Praetorian Guard, but I would say that St. Paul had a massive impact on the Praetorian Guard because he got to convert many of them in his 2-year imprisonment in Rome, as we read in the letter of the book of Acts. And he also had a big impact on the house of Nero as well, as I've stated in my documentary film on the End Times on my YouTube channel. So I'm not saying it's not beyond the realm of possibility. There are great men and women serving our country right now in the armed forces, but they are in many ways behind enemy lines. And I tell parents, don't have some romantic notion about what it's like in the military. If you send your kid, who's a kid, they're teenagers, you're sending them to the deep end of the pool, and it's bloody, and there are sharks circling. So they better be ready. If they're ready, if they have the kind of fortitude to maintain their faith when they're the only one in the room, surrounded by a bunch of pagan hedonists, and they can maintain their faith, then praise be to God. Praise be to God. Do you want them all? If they're being mandated to get the jab, that's a problem. For that reason alone, I wouldn't send them. But they have to be prepared to stand on their 2 feet against everyone on what they believe. Yeah. Because the environment, especially at the lower level enlisted level, is very toxic, very worldly, very hedonistic, very toxic. And if they can't deal with the criticism and the pressure, the peer pressure of that, they're going to cave. They're going to be just like their friends there. They're going to be alcoholics. They're going to be abusers of many kinds. And you don't want that. So prepare your kid well. That's my advice. Prepare them well. Prepare them to stand their ground. And then they'll be a shining light in a dark space. And then it is good. Praise be to God. It will be good. Amen. But it takes that. It does take that. Hey, Tate Brown, good morning. Kilroy Jones, I see you there. Gregory, good morning there. Catherine Johnson, Robert Kennedy, good morning. Victim of circumstances, UFOs are real. You're right, they are real. Demons are real. It's true. They're interdimensional beings who want nothing more than to see you burn in hell for all eternity. And they're happy to manipulate your mind, happy to manipulate the government's mind, and anybody's mind towards that end. And so don't fall victim of circumstance. See the pun? I meant that. It was totally intended. Richard, again, good morning to you. Thanks for being on the team. Alberto says, remember Gulf War syndrome? Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm suffering from it this week. From Form Square, sir. Happened to me in the military. Thank God I came back. Lori, good morning. Pagan hedonist sounds like college. Exactly. Don't send them there unprepared either. 100%. I'm on your team, Lori. I'm totally on board. Don't send your kid to college without being prepared. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And don't send them off to college just because you think they won't amount to anything otherwise. That's just not the case. It's just totally not the case. I mean, Jake's been to college. Look at him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Don't. You don't want your kids to turn out like me, folks. Don't send your kids to college.
I've been to college. I'm perfectly fine. What are you talking about? Like everything's fine.
As I said, when I hurt my head, they did a CT scan. They found nothing. So
it's funny when I was just laughing about that because when I was in the hospital this past week, they did 2 CT scans and an MRI. And then I kept waiting for the results, and nobody would tell me what they found, So finally, I'm like, I asked the doctor, and he's like, it's like literally nothing. I'm like, what? So I kept asking, and the nurse goes, oh yeah, the neurologist looked at it. He said it was unimpressive. I'm like, what? Get that dude in this room right now. I'll impress that guy. Get over here, buddy. Unimpressive. Let me show you, pal. Okay, my brain is impressive. Okay, who you? Anyway, yeah. So unimpressive. That's my mind. So if you want an impressive mind, perhaps don't go to college. You might be better off. I don't know.
Alberto says Jake's CT scan found 1940s radio valves. I don't know what that's a reference to, Alberto, but it sounds interesting.
You know what else I watched over the weekend with my kids was Bringing a Baby with, what's
classic.
her name? Katharine Hepburn.
Classic.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's a roller coaster ride.
Screwball comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Julie, good morning to you. Says they're both married, got married before. Well, who's married? What are we talking about? We have 2 sons, active duty. We are retired 23 and a half years, and they're both married, your sons, and they got, before going in, having someone to lift you up is the key. You know what the divorce rate is in the military?
Yeah.
You know what the abuse rate is in the military? It's high. You know, as an enlisted Marine, as a young, stupid enlisted Marine, speaking for myself, we were told we weren't authorized to get married. You weren't allowed to get married. You had to have permission from your commanding officer to get married. Why? Because they know you get divorced, because they know you abuse, because you're too busy acting the fool, because you're not mature, because you're going through your rite of passage and you have no moral compass except for your buddies who also don't have a moral compass. And so you have a bad peer group, and they know that. They're not dumb. And so why allow you to run off, get married, and destroy another marriage and hurt your spouse or kids and then leave them with the expense of having to deal with it all? So, I mean, let that sink in about the nature and the environment of military life. We should change it by what? By preparing men and women more appropriately to serve. It needs to be a calling. Tate, good morning. It says, pray for intercession of St. Charbel for medical problems. I reported a personal blessing in 2024. Thanks for the tip. I love that. I will be praying for that. Absolutely. I missed one. I saw something and now it's gone. That's why they left went for the that's why the left went for the military. Lots of Christians and conservatives. I'll never forget the first time, and this was 2005 maybe, when I read the article in the USA Today about the U.S. Air Force Academy welcoming in Wicca. I'm like, that's it. It's over. Put a fork in the Air Force Academy. It's done. And now today, Christians are actively being suppressed there. There's lots of stories. I've interviewed, I haven't had him on in a long time, but he was a former JAG officer. And he was Air Force, actually. And he was representing, his career was put into jeopardy because of the vaccine. And he's represented many members of the American military. He kind of got famous, so to speak, because he was representing SEAL team guys and fighter pilot guys who were trying to prevent from being discharged because they didn't want to get the vax because of the medical implications of those things, and they didn't want to be harmed. I should get him back on. I haven't talked to him in a long time. But he and I were talking about the Air Force Academy and how there are lots of stories of Christians there having to go incognito because of the peer pressure within the Air Force Academy and the leadership there to suppress their Christian beliefs because, all religions are equal. No, they're not. There's only one way to heaven. In Proxima says, I'm part of the military vet first responder disaster response org. My first op was with Harvey. Great people when they're helping others. Lots of woke nonsense when they've got downtime. It's not that I'm denying the goodness of our members. There's lots of great members that serve our country. They're good. They've got good things, but to be good, is it good enough to be good enough? No, it's not. God asks more of us. Women in the military. I'm on Pete Hegseth's side. No women in combat, and if I could have my way, women would, if they served at all, it would be in like traditional roles of like nursing care, hospital, medical, that kind of thing. It would not, if it were me and I was Holy Roman Emperor, I would not have women anywhere near a battlefield. No way, no how. What say you, Louis? Do you have an opinion on that one?
Well, for the record, let me say that none of my daughters are interested in serving in combat.
Praise be to God.
I have 3 of them, and none of them have ever mentioned wanting to serve in combat.
It's not a natural feminine urge. Stepping up to help when times are desperate is one thing, but that's literally a sign of desperation. Is when your city's under siege and the women have to be up there loading the guns for the men. Like that is a sign that you are kind of on your last legs. It's a sign that you just need every hand to the walls, to support in whatever way you can. It's not a natural feminine urge to say, I want to go out there and kill the bad guy. Like, no, that's not how God created us.
Right.
That just ain't, ain't right.
And you're right about that, because it's an indicator of desperation in terms of who else do you have to help fight, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's why one of the things we've got to really worry about is the birth rate. The birth rate in certain countries, right? And so, like, from what I understand, there's some countries in Eastern Europe that are on the verge of extinction in the next 20, 25 years in terms of because they're not repopulating, right?
Yep.
And thank God that I hear that the number of the birth rate in America is starting to creep up a little bit in certain states. Not all states, definitely not my state of California, but it's starting to creep up a little bit. But that's the culture of death that impacts, and this woke culture that really looks down on married life and family life. It's family life is, from my perspective, I'm a married man with 6 kids. It's the greatest joy I could have experienced in my life. I mean, it gives me purpose, right? And so, I always joke around with people when they talk about Social Security. I always tell them I'm going to get my Social Security for sure because I provided 6 contributors into the system.
That's great. Yes, yeah. It's funny because I've got 6 kids as well. I've got 3 grandkids now too. Praise be to God. And I've often said to my kid, like when I left corporate America and went into Catholic nonprofit work, I basically gave up on things like health insurance and retirement. I'm not saying that about my current employer; they're amazing. But I'm just saying in general, you give up a lot of things to do this kind of work, and I'm like, you're it. You have to provide, and that's by intention. That's by design. God designed it this way. When Joseph was betrothed to Mary, the concept at the time was he would build an extension on his own parents' house to then prepare for the day that he could bring her to the home as a part of the greater family. That was by design. We've lost that. As Americans, we are much, and this brings me into my rant about immigration again, because all of these, look at the Hispanic immigrants coming across from whatever country they come from, South America, Mexico, South America, whatever. Predominantly, most of them are going to be, potentially Catholic. But how Catholic are they? If they were fervent Catholics, oh man, let them in, because that's only going to benefit our country. That's going to be a great benefit to our country. I would love for us to be impacted by their family centeredness, by their fidelity and zealousness for Holy Mother Church and for the truth of the Holy Gospel, that you can find no salvation outside of the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I would love for that, for their zealousness in praying the rosary or their piety. I would love for that. It would be nothing but a benefit to our country, because we knuckleheads in America, we hate each other. We don't want to hang out with each other. We don't want to hang out with our family members. Our kids are on TikTok all day, and they leave the home and they go off to secular hedonism in college or the military or the workforce or whatever. That's the standard in our country. So if we could change that through immigration, I'd be all right with that. Bring it on. But the reality is they're surface level Catholics at best. And they, especially in places, a lot of these places in South America, Mexico, they have been lied to about their faith. They're mixing and matching their Catholic faith with things like Santa Muerta, which is of the devil. And so they're being highly misled by that. So unfortunately, they won't have the kind of impact on our culture that I would love for them to have. Instead, what I see firsthand living in Houston, I'm sure you see it in LA as well, is they come to our country and within a generation, they are just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
We convert them, not the other way around. They come to the American dream, and it turns out the American dream is a shallow, materialistic, dystopian future. Congratulations. Welcome to it.
Well, you know what they say, Joe. Man does not live by bread and water alone, right? And so it's the word that makes a man, fulfills a man's heart, and gives him a moral compass to realize something in life. And so that's something that needs to be realized from the pulpit. But Let me share something with you, if I may. You saw my bio that I'm also president of a transitional homeless shelter, and that's an effort to help reunite the family unit. And I'll tell you this much: we see a lot of folks who just don't have that a natural safety net of family where they can go. They lose their job and they have no place to stay. Well, if you have a good family life, you knock on your uncle's door, or you go to your brother's house and they help you out. And we've got a lot of broken homes where, husband and wife divorce, and so single moms. And so we've kind of elevated this title of being a single mom, of being a great badge of courage. This has to stop, And so I see it as the president of a transitional shelter, where we just don't have the safety net in society like we used to have 30 years ago, when our nation was Christ-centered. We did the pledge, we prayed in school and public school. Our cities, our governments opened up with an invocation. All of these things are going away, and it's causing breakdown in the family. I mean, it's already a breakdown. It's still existing in certain areas, but we're trying to rebuild it. So you're right, and the Catholics that are coming over now, the Catholics with a lowercase c. We've got to rebuild our country from the bottom up, from a Christ-centered perspective. Viva Cristo Rey, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Father Miguel Pro.
That's right.
Why
isn't he a saint? Why is he not a saint? He died a martyr's death. Yeah. Pictures of his martyrdom. We have all the evidence we need. Why is he not automatically a saint? This makes no sense to me. We need Saint Miguel Pro today. We need Saint Miguel Pro. Yeah. We need courageous, incredible Catholic men like Miguel Pro to inspire and waken the heart of Catholic men everywhere, because we're complacent, we're lethargic, we're materialists, we're just secular, and we need to wake up. If we really want to change the world, if we really want our communities to be better, it has to be led by the Catholic faith. Bishops have to get off the fence and lead with courage instead of worldliness. And as if I were, I like to. The joke is, when I become Holy Roman Emperor, I will force the church to send missionaries once again into Mexico, into these other countries, to reinvigorate the faith there and to save them from the lies and manipulations of Santa Muerta and the secularists. And to reinvigorate their faith, to remind them of the Cristeros, to remind them of Our Lady Guadalupe and what she did for all of America, let alone the whole world. I mean, her image was at the Battle of Lepanto for a reason, for crying out loud, to hold back the tide of the Muslim horde, which is now all over Europe. There's only one solution to any problem, and until we decide that's what we're going to go with, we will only see more problems, more delay, more brokenness, more bureaucracy, more the rest. Patrick Mason says, have faith. Of all people, we must believe our prayers will be effective. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Pray, fast, do penance. That's our call. Damon says, I went from serving in the U.S. Air Force to serving in nursing homes, crisis pregnancy centers, and soup kitchens. Joe, look up the name Dan Lynch Apostolates. I will. I'll take that, Damon. Thanks for that. Edward Clancy, my friend, how are you? We've been praying for you, Edward. Hopefully you're okay. Edward went to the hospital. Please keep Edward in your prayers. We need Edward on the front lines, not just for the church, aid to the church in need. That was what I was going to say, but also for his wife and for his children. We need Edward to be happy and healthy and ready. His work is vitally important at Aid to the Church in Need. So please keep Edward in your prayers today. I'd be grateful to you. Sci-Fi pointed out that we also need the church's approval to get married. Yeah, that's so true. So true indeed. Mateus says, can I get a shout out? No, I'm not giving you any shout outs, Mateus, buddy. No, forget it. I'm not doing it. You can ask, but I'm not going to give you any shout outs, Mateus. How's Boston, by the way? How many bagel morning sausage sandwiches have you had from Dunkin' Donuts at this point? Probably one too many, I'm going to argue. Did you, when you pull up to Dunkin's? Is that Mateus
from Boston or Mateus from California?
Well, it's Mateus from California, but he's in Boston. He's in Boston for a hockey tournament.
Hey, I've got. Oh yes, most definitely. I know why he's there with his kid. He's there with his kid.
Yeah.
Can I? request permission to do a shout out at the privilege of a guest for a good buddy of mine who's in Boston.
Okay, very
Thanks for the tip, Matt. Thanks for the tip, Matt. All the best.
So the trick is when you go to Dunkin's, you pull up and you say, "Can I get an extra large, extra?" That's what you just say. They know exactly what that
Extra
means.
large, extra.
That's called a mocky mock. That's called a mocky mock.
Yeah.
Here in
Buffalo, we have the double double.
Different. The double double.
Yeah,
is that what it is?
That's from Tim's.
The extra is like extra cream, extra sugar.
Yeah.
So and it's great because the sugar all goes to the bottom of the cup and just sits there, a big giant clump. And this way you can pretend you're just like your friends at work, and you drink nothing but garbage and poison in your body with sugar, but really you're just secretly having coffee with no sugar.
Coffee on the top.
So all the sugar's still at the bottom.
Coffee
so you see how it works?
But that's where the straw is, Joe. That's
Don't
where
go
the
to
straw
the straw.
goes.
Then you're defeating the purpose of being sneaky. Okay, sugar's harmful to your soul. Don't have it.
That's what I do. Yeah, that's why God sent the Israel to a land filled with it.
Anyway, Luis, thanks for your time. Had a great time having you on. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning for another round. God bless you. God love you. And share us with a friend. We'd be grateful.